So first off, let me clarify that when I say show off the Steam Deck, I'm not advocating for snobbery here or anything like that. Rather, what I'm talking about is making sure that whatever game you fire up when you first hand the Steam Deck to a new player, that it's going to be something that resonates with them and really communicates the value and the features of the system itself. So with that in mind, today what I wanted to do is just go over a few different types of gamers, or archetypes if you will, and really go over some of the games that I think make sense to go ahead and launch before you put the Steam Deck in their hands. And the reason I say that is because the game that you might show to your mom or your grandma might be very different than the game that you would show to your buddy who only streams first-person shooters. So let's go ahead and start with the first type of gamer, which is the person who is just completely and utterly uninitiated when it comes to video gaming, or they only ever play video games just casually. This person only has a passable understanding of gaming or gaming culture as a whole. Maybe they've played games once or twice in the past or are familiar with some household names like Mario Kart or Halo or something like that, but for the most part they have zero familiarity with video games. So with that in mind, if you're going to be shoving a Steam Deck into their hands, which comparatively already has way more buttons than a standard modern video game controller, it's already going to be kind of intimidating, so I think it makes sense to start them off with something a little bit easy and quick to pick up and play, rather than something that is just going to be way more complex like the opening hours of, say, Death Stranding. So in this situation, I'm pretty sure my top recommendation for really showing off what the system can do and its features without being too intimidating would be Aperture Desk Job. After all, it is purpose-built to showcase the features of the deck, it's hilarious, and you can beat the entire thing in, I want to say, like 20 minutes. In one fell swoop, you'll communicate why the Steam Deck is so rad, and also give a good idea of its capabilities. Or failing that, I would say something that's still simple and easy to understand, but also still high quality, like New Super Lucky's Tale maybe, or maybe a simple racing game like Hot Wheels Unleashed, which is excellent, by the way. Now, moving up slightly in recommendation complexity is the console fanboy or fangirl. Now this is someone who plays games regularly and can come to grips with new hardware and new games on new hardware pretty easily. This is the category I would probably slot myself into, but it might be a bit of a hard sell to make a case for a PC-based platform. Plus they might just be a fan of console gaming as a whole rather than slotting neatly into one of the big three camps. But honestly, even someone who owns every modern console typically gravitates to one more than the other two. So for the sake of simplicity, let's just modify the approach based on which one of those three your buddy's most interested in at the time. Now if we're talking about a Sony fan, I think it would definitely make sense to show off a familiar experience. And there's no shortage of PlayStation Studios titles that you could fire up, from indie darlings from the past like Flower, to AAA heavy hitters like God of War, Days Gone, and now Spider-Man, all of which look fantastic and play smoothly on the deck. Now if it's an Xbox fan that you're pitching the Steam Deck to, I think it makes sense to load up something like one of the Forzas or maybe Sea of Thieves, considering that they both run on the deck and they're both pretty graphically impressive titles. Or you might fire up Game Pass and show off some of the cloud streaming for a few of the titles that aren't natively supported on the deck just yet. Now when it comes to Nintendo fans, I intentionally saved them for last because I would say even the most affable Nintendo fan might be a little hesitant about the Steam Deck, considering it is kind of encroaching on the Switch's territory right now. Now obviously you can't really show off any of Nintendo's biggest games without emulation, so if you're looking for clean, native options to try and indoctrinate a Nintendo fan, some of the Square RPGs might be a good candidate, particularly Octopath Traveler. Although you might also try to hit some of the third-party ports that came over to the Switch so that you can illustrate some increased graphical fidelity on the deck. Games like The Witcher 3, BioShock Infinite, and actually, it might not be a bad idea to do like Darksiders 2 maybe, considering that, definitely has some Zelda elements about it. But if your friend really is just a multi-platform, just completely indiscriminate console gaming fan, you really can't go wrong with a number of non-exclusive AAAs that are available for the deck. Games like Resident Evil 2 Remake, Deathloop, or on the indie side, maybe some of the more well-known titles like Hades or Stardew Valley might be in order. And speaking of indie titles, let's go ahead and move on to the next archetype, the indie gamer. And I think we all know somebody of this particular persuasion, either in real life or virtually. This is the kind of gamer who really values things like quirkiness or narrative or obscurity above just about all else. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that, right? Like, we all have our personal preferences. I'm just saying if you are dealing with somebody who has more artful taste, it's probably better not to kick them off with something like Wolfenstein 2. And when you're showcasing the deck to this type of gamer, I figure you just about can't go wrong with anything from Annapurna Interactive. Stray's probably a safe bet, but they might find it too mainstream given its success. So maybe What Remains of Edith Finch, or Outer Wilds, or I don't know, maybe some deeper cuts like Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. But odds are good you absolutely won't find the perfect game because, predictably, you probably haven't heard of it. But still, showing off some indie title that gets you into the action quickly, maybe something like Celeste or The Binding of Isaac, would be good candidates for showcasing that you can enjoy some of those smaller titles on the deck and with absolutely solid performance on the go. Next up, for lack of a better term, I'm just going to say is Shooter Bro, which I actually based on a good friend of mine who I think fits this exact description. But this is the type of gamer who really only plays the absolute most mainstream of titles, and usually they're the pretty aggressive multiplayer sort. Talking games like Call of Duty, or Grand Theft Auto, or Halo. The order of the day really is violent, high-octane, wildly popular multiplayer fare, and typically those of the AAA variety almost exclusively. And to that end, if you're showing the Steam Deck to a gamer of these particular tastes for the first time, I figure you really can't go wrong with one of the Call of Duties, or Grand Theft Auto 5, or Doom Eternal, Apex Legends, and the like. And side note, just for fun, while I was outlining this video, I actually called my buddy who I thought fit the archetype, and I asked him, hey, what would be a game that you'd be most excited to see on the Steam Deck if you thought it was going to resonate with you? And immediately he went to Call of Duty. This was right before reminding me that I have to come over to his house and we're spending an entire day playing Modern Warfare 2 this October. So yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm on point with this one, or at least in the ballpark, because for this type of gamer, it certainly doesn't make sense to kick them off with something like Disco Elysium, because it's probably not going to speak to them in any meaningful way. Actually, I still need to play Disco Elysium. And finally, the last type of gamer that I put on this list is the retro gamer, which I think begs the question, how retro are they? Because they're a dyed-in-the-wool purist in so much as they demand original hardware, probably with SCART cables to get the best possible picture out of a CRT only, then the deck is probably not going to inspire a lot of excitement. But if they're not a purist and they take a more relaxed approach to retro gaming experiences, then emulation is definitely going to be your friend here. And really just about anything, at least pre-PS3 era, should run reasonably well to show off how the deck can serve as a retro gaming buffet, but it'd probably make some sense to pick an old school stunner in the vein of Ocarina of Time, or maybe Mario Bros. 3. Some retro title that's just undeniably great. Although there are plenty of high-quality indie titles that really nail that 8 or 16-bit aesthetic, so you might also consider doing something like Dead Cells or Iconoclasts. But yeah, I would say whatever you choose, just make sure it's a high-quality retro experience, whether that's directly through emulation, or you might just pick a modern title that runs natively on the Steam Deck, but really captures like the 8 or 16-bit aesthetic, or something like a boomer shooter like, Dusk or whatever that harkens back to the Doom days. So yeah, these are just some of the typical types of gamers that I could think of kind of off the top of my head. I think some more general tips also would be, if it's a game that's going to have like a really lengthy startup sequence with like really long cutscenes or just a lot of tutorializing, maybe just load up a save that's already deep into the gameplay and just explain it as needed. That way they can just kind of like hit the ground running. And obviously also, if they're not familiar with the Steam Deck at all, you might want to explain, any extra buttons that are present, because it can feel kind of alien compared to just, the standard controller that a lot of people are used to. And I gotta tell you, I had a whole lot of fun putting this together because it was largely based off of my personal experience just showing the Steam Deck to various people from various walks of gaming life. But hey, what about you? Are there any archetypes that I didn't mention here, or, specific recommendations you would make to those types of gamers? I would love to hear your thoughts as well. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch these videos. I really appreciate it. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.